00314. My name is Kent Chandler. I'm chairman of the Public Service Commission. I'll be presiding today. Along with me is Commissioner Mary Pat Regan. I just asked before we get started that if you have cell phones, that you please either turn them off or place them on silent. I just want to confirm, Ms. Honaker, we have no one participating remotely. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Everyone's in person. Great. All right. So the purpose of today's hearing is to take evidence in this matter. Before we get started in earnest, we'll go ahead and take an entry of appearance of counsel. I'd ask Ms. Honaker, when you make your entry of appearance, if you could also let us know which witnesses you've brought today, and if you have a proposed order in which you plan to call your witnesses.
Allison Honaker, Honaker Law Office, here on behalf of East Kentucky Power Cooperative. I sent a list yesterday, but it was probably late. I was traveling. So we're going to call Michelle Carpenter, Tom Stacknick, Darren Adams, Laura LeMaster, and Lucas Spencer.
Lucas Spencer?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I had that maybe Mr. Comer had responded to data requests. Is that not correct?
I don't remember him responding to anything. I don't remember seeing his in anything,
Okay.
unless I totally overlooked one.
Maybe I'm incorrect.
He sent out the notices to the property owners, I think. Is that maybe what you saw? Do we need him?
That's right. He was a responsible, he was, use your term, a responsible person identified in the application for the newspaper notice and the verification of the mailing of notice to property owners. That's right. So that's fine. I just noticed that he was a witness in the case.
If we need him, we can get him here. If you...
I don't foresee that we would need him.
Okay.
All right. And is that the order in which you intend to call those witnesses?
Yes.
Okay. So Michelle Carpenter, Mr. Stacknick, Mr. Adams, Ms. LeMaster, and then Lucas Spencer?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Honaker. And for commission staff?
Heather Temple and Mariah Tussie.
Thank you. Regarding public notice, Ms. Honaker, we've had a chance to review the notice of publication,
The second one.
the tear sheets, and then the motion for deviation, the notice and motion. So we're going to continue with the hearing today, and then we'll issue an order separately on the motion for deviation. All right. As of at least about 10 minutes ago, no one had indicated on our website, we had provided the link in accordance with the notice that was provided by East Kentucky Power on how to sign up if folks would like to provide public comments remotely. No one has indicated their interest in doing so. Seeing that everybody in the hearing room is either from the commission or the applicant, I know we won't open it up and take our time to take public comments from anyone here. I would, however, for anybody that watches this live, streaming, or prior to the submission of the case, just remind folks that you can still provide public comments at any time before the case is taken under consideration. There's three ways in which you provide public comments. The first is electronically through our website at psc.ky.gov. There's a form on there you can fill out. Second is through email. We have an email address specifically for public comments, psc.comment@ky.gov. And then finally, you can mail public comments to the Public Service Commission at 211 Sauer Boulevard, Frankfort, Kentucky 40602. We just ask that anytime you file public comments that you include your name, your address, and indicate which case number you would like to place the comments. And in this matter, the case number is 2022-00314. All right, Ms. Honaker, now that we've got that out of the way, do you have anything else that we need to take under consideration before you call your first witness?
I don't think so, Your Honor.
Okay. Proceed at your pleasure.
Michelle Carpenter.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat. State your name and address for the record, please.
Michelle Carpenter, 4775 Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky.
Ms. Honaker?
Can you state your title, please?
Controller.
And did you sponsor a response to data request in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any additions or corrections to make to that response?
I do not.
If I were to ask you that same question today, would your response be the same?
Yes, it would.
Do you, is it your desire and intent to incorporate that into the record of this proceeding?
Yes.
And what materials did you bring to the stand with you today?
Just a copy of my response.
The witness is available for cross.
Counsel?
Staff has no questions.
Commissioner?
No, I don't think I do, thanks.
Before I ask Ms. Carpenter any questions, Ms. Honaker, I'd like to have an appreciation, given the issues around need in this case, the forward-looking need versus the immediate need in response to, imminent's not the right word, but, somebody that's sitting there waiting for you all to build this transmission facility, to have a better appreciation if that makes a distinction as it relates to rates, and especially the particular tariffs around what a prospective customer's responsibility is around the payment and the cost of transmission service. Does that make sense? Do you all have any of your 5 witnesses that you think would be best to answer that? Like a contribution and aid of construction type question?
There. Mr. Adams.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Carpenter. Is there any reason Ms. Carpenter can't be excused for the remainder of the hearing?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I excuse Ms. Carpenter with the expectation, I guess, I say this, that when it comes to, I'll have questions about cost estimates of different varying alternatives, and I would guess that Ms. Carpenter is not the appropriate witness for that. Is that correct?
And you are the master.
Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Honaker, would you like to call our next witness?
Tom Stacknick.
Oh,
I probably need it, but I can just, I can just.
You sure? If you need it, I'll take it out and hand it to you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record.
Tom Stacknick, 4775 Lexington Road, Winchester.
Ms. Honaker?
And what is your title for East Kentucky Power?
VP of Finance and Treasurer?
And did you sponsor a data request to be filed in the record of this proceeding?
Yes.
If I were to ask you that same question today, would your response be the same?
Yes.
Do you have any additions, corrections, anything to make to that response?
No.
Is it your desire and intent to incorporate that into the record of this proceeding?
Yes.
And did you bring any materials to the stand with you today?
No.
Witness is available for cross.
Counsel?
I believe, excuse me, I believe a lot of my questions are more about the pricing of the project and the alternatives. Would that be more appropriate for Mr. Adams?
Yeah, someone in the, Laura, Miss
Oh,
Lemaster.
Ms. Lemaster, I'm sorry. Then I don't have any questions.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I have more questions on the rates and, so I don't think I do have any.
So, I have a couple of Mr. Stacknick.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I have an appreciation for if you all, if East Kentucky encounters an unexpected, and by unexpected I mean just not previously planned for, right? And let's say at least not anticipated or envisioned in your last base rate case, which feels like it was the other day, but I think it may be like a year ago, year and a half ago, something in that range, right? And the unexpected expense is about $1 million. Let's call it somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million, and if it matters, let me know. But in that range. what does that change in terms of your all's finances? Is that an impact? Is it a rounding error? Is it material? Just, can you walk me through that?
Yeah, I would say it's not very material. From a cash flow perspective, we have over 150 million available on our credit facility, so we would be able to come up with the cash. And right now, with the rate case that we had last year, I don't think 1 million in margin would be much of an effect.
Okay, so different scenario, and I guess related to this, is it's not a $1 million cash situation. It's a $1 million net income impact, right? Because it's a non-cash, depreciation's non-cash. So, but you're experiencing it when you're calculating your net income. Depreciation expense and the net income that flows from that through your income statement, that is taken into account when determining whether you're in compliance with your debt covenants, right?
Yeah, depreciation expense, it also goes into the numerator too, so it increases cash flow since the cash is already gone. So the debt covenants wouldn't be greatly affected.
Okay. So in the second scenario, instead of it being $1 million hit to cash, you were saying, you know, we can weather that. It's approximately 50, this project is around $50 million impact to cash, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know whether that's expected to occur in a single year or over a number of years?
I think it would be over a couple of years.
That's your expectation? So let's call it, I know it doesn't work out this way, but let's call it over 2 years at about $25 million a year. That starts becoming a good portion of your $150 million revolving credit line, right?
Yeah, 500 million, 150 available, yes.
Okay. So it's been drawn down already 350 is what you're saying?
Right now it has been, yes.
Okay. And talk about materiality of a $50 million cash outflow over 2 years, and then related to that, an additional, or reflective of that $50 million outflow, an additional $1 million in depreciation expense.
So the depreciation expenses we talked about already is not very significant. Cash flow wise, we are expecting over the next couple of years to receive about 200 million in funds from RUS for the CCR ELG project. So we're expecting that over the next year or so. Looking at Brad. So that's sort of in our cash flow forecast too. There's a lag between when we receive the funds from RUS and when we initially fund them with our credit facility, as we talked about on this project.
So that would be for the environmental controls that you all expect that haven't been approved for yet at Spurlock, is that right?
Yeah, they're complete and
Okay.
operational. There's just some accounting that needs to be done before we get the funds from RUS.
Okay.
So that will create a lot of room on that $500 million credit facility.
Let me be clear about what you're, just because you talk out of different, you do this every day, right? So so what you're saying is you've drawn down your revolving line to pay for the upgrades for CCR and ELG, but you all expected and do continue to expect to actually finance those long-term through an RUS loan that you've yet to receive the money for.
Correct. And when we receive those funds, that will pay down that credit facility.
All right. Talking about this specific project, we'll talk about it as a single project. It's a single proposal, right? When did this come into your all's financial forecasting?
As far as cash flow, probably within the last 6 months to a year.
I'm sorry, Mr. Shagney, I gotta depend on you. If you don't know,
Yeah,
that's fine. But
Yeah, just recently, the last 6 months to a year.
okay, so it was not expected when you all were looking at your 5-year plan or something like that, when you were talking about your rate case and what was needed?
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Is that
But,
normal?
yeah, I would say so. And with the 50 million, if we didn't have the 200 million coming on the RUS, we could go back to our banks and ask for an increase in our credit facility. We have commission approval to go up to 800 million on that credit facility. with some of the extension and accordion options. So if we did foresee that we would be pushing a lot closer to that 500 million, we would be taking steps with our bank group to increase those lines. But at this time, I don't think this 50 million will stress that.
Okay. How about this 50 million in the context of anything additional? Is there anything else that's been brought to your attention in the last 6 months or a year, kind of like this one, where it's a fairly good, I mean, you know, in the context of having net investment rate base of like $3 billion or whatever it is you all have, right?
Yeah.
Assets of a few $1 billion. What is net utility plant estimated at $3 billion at the end of December 31, 2021? I know 50 million doesn't sound like a lot, but is there anything else that was unexpected? It's the wrong probably word to use, but that wasn't included in your all's planning that has come up that's of a similar or greater magnitude than this project?
I would say nothing unexpected.
Okay. So when you all do like capital plans, do you all do 1 year, 2 year, 5 year? What's your all's outlook when you all start doing long-term capital plans?
We do a detailed one for the next 2 years out, but then every capital project that the engineering team foresees in the next 2 to 3 years goes on our RUS construction work plan. And as those construction work plans get completed, we go to RUS and apply for those funds with RUS.
And so you all do a 5-year work plan with them, or you said a 3-year work plan?
I think 3
Okay.
is the main thing, but there are, you know, longer-term strategic plans that are discussed.
And that's just if you are able to include it and they approve it for inclusion, or I don't know the right word. I don't know if technically approves the right word, but if they're fine with your inclusion of projects in the construction work plan, then that opens up the opportunity for RUS financing of that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And just so that I sort of go for full circle here, I think the data request that you sponsored, you talk about how you plan to initially finance the project with internally available general funds.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to me to be like working capital.
Just our working capital, our,
Okay.
yeah,
So.
and the credit
So
facility.
well, that's what I'm trying to, so it's like you can fund working capital by drawing down from, technically drawing down cash from a facility, right? Like
Yes.
you can fund, but I guess the response seemed to indicate that you all expected to have enough cash effectively generated from operations, like a cash flow from operations perspective, as
Yes.
opposed to needing to draw down from a facility. So is
I would
there
say it's a
expectation that
combination
you'll
of the
have?
two.
Is the expectation that you'll have the cash flow available from operations, or that you will need to draw down from debt in order to finance the facility?
I'd have to look at the actual cash flow statement to get the exact numbers, but, you know, it's always a combination of the two.
Let me ask it this way, Mr. Stackney.
Okay.
Do you plan on, over the next 2 years, assuming this is the CPC is granted and everything else goes the way you expected with your capital plan, to need to draw down from that facility in order to finance projects?
Probably timing wise, yes, because $50 million of cash flow doesn't usually come in 1 month, so it's just a matter of the fungibility of cash, and, you know,
Okay.
it might be a little short 1 month, a little bit long another month, and we, you know, pay down or draw down on our credit facility as we need to make up for whatever difference there might be there.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Stackney. Ms. Honaker?
I have nothing further.
Is there any reason Mr. Stackney can't be excused?
No, sir.
All right, thank you for being here today.
Thanks.
Ms. Honaker?
We call Darren Adams.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right. Please have a seat and state your name and address for the record.
Darren Adams, 4775 Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky.
Ms. Honaker?
Can you state your title, please, for E EKPC?
Yeah, I am the Director of Transmission Planning and Protection for EKPC.
And did you sponsor testimony and respond to data requests in this proceeding?
I did.
Do you have any additions, corrections, changes to make to those responses?
No, I don't.
If I were to ask you those same questions today, would your responses be the same?
Yes,
Is it your desire and intent to incorporate those into the record of this proceeding?
yes, it is.
And what materials did you bring to the stand with you today?
I brought a copy of the application and the data request responses that were filed in this case.
The witness is available for cross.
Sorry, I just don't know which one. Counsel, I'll just say counsel, so that's fine.
Sorry. Mr. Adams, in the third request responses, item 8, it was estimated that this new 138 kV line would not be needed until the year 2044. Is that still correct?
That is correct, based on the load forecast that were used at the time we did the studies.
And when was that study done?
Approximately 9 months ago.
Do you all have any actual commitments from any companies to be served by EKPC that is leading to this acceleration of that 2044 timeline?
We don't have any firm commitments at this time.
And so what load growth are you anticipating per year that leads to that 2044 year?
I don't know per year. I know that our estimate is with an addition of more than 3 megawatts of load, we begin to see issues on the system. So that 2044 year would represent when we see that amount of load growth. And there is a caveat there. We have a project in our plan to build a new substation in the area southeast of Berea called Big Hill. I believe it was referenced in the study. That substation will take some load off of this circuit, approximately 7 megawatts. So that's part of the reason we're seeing the need pushed out to 2044 is we are taking action to move some load off of the circuit to help with the issues that we're seeing.
Do you know of any additional load growth from any existing industries or large commercial businesses on that circuit?
Yeah, so we just, last year, mid-year or so, added a new substation called Speedwell Road that is serving a single customer, which is App Harvest. That demand is about 27 megawatts. There's also expansion that's been confirmed at the Hitachi plant in Berea in the range of 4 to 6 megawatts. And that expansion started occurring last year and is continuing into this year. And then there are some new loads that are confirmed in that area. I believe one of the industries is Heister in Berea, a couple of megawatts. So the Hitachi and Heister loads are on our Alcan substations.
So in that same third request for information, item 6, the response stated that you all expect the next load forecast for substations in that area will increase the total load in the area, which should indicate a more immediate need for additional transmission to support that increased load. And so when do you anticipate that next load forecast will be completed?
We are working on it right now. It will be completed probably within the next 2 to 3 months. So we do our load forecasting every 2 years, and we use historical data to base that load forecast on. And based on what we're seeing with actual loads in this area, we expect the forecast to increase in this next iteration.
So it was also stated in several places that the transmission planning studies show that there is very little ability to serve incremental load in this area. So in the short term, is just double circuiting the 69 kV rebuild going to be enough to do that?
So the double circuit is to prepare for when the need materializes. We will have to complete the work at the substations on each end, as we've outlined in the application. But the longest lead time part of the project is establishing the transmission line between the two substation locations. So by double circuiting, we will address that and be prepared to more quickly establish the connections at the ends when we need the support in the area.
It was said in multiple different places that only 3 megawatts of additional load can be served from that existing 69 kV system without creating unacceptable system voltages. Could you all provide that load study as a post-hearing data request?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And then, are you the person to talk about the alternate routes and why alternate B was selected?
Are we referring to the route,
Yes,
the
I'm
different
sorry.
routes?
Yes.
That would be Ms. Lemaster.
Okay. And so, I think you kind of just touched on this, but the Madison County switching station, is that one of the projects that you believe needs to be constructed now, regardless of whether or not the 138 kV line is built?
Correct. The 69 kV portion of the switching station is needed to address existing issues that we have in that area.
And could you please explain some of those issues?
So the primary issue is a system protection concern. If we have faults on the tap line that comes off of the main circuit and feeds our Crooksville and Speedwell Road substations, because of the length of that tap and the distance to the breakers at each end, the faults can be slow to clear, which could result in additional breakers at other substations operating and tripping off other customers. So we need to establish a switching station to shorten the length of those lines in order to address the protection issue. Also, an ancillary benefit is, as we've indicated, there's 7 substations on the circuit with a large amount of load, particularly industrial load. So by establishing a switching station in the middle of the circuit, we will be reducing the exposure to those customers to outages.
Okay. And the step-down transformer that was discussed, could you please explain the need for that project in greater detail?
Sure. So when we build the 138 kV circuit, as I mentioned earlier, initially we will build the line but not perform the substation work on each end. So we've essentially got a 138 kV line with no termination on either end. On the northern end, when we need the line for support, we would connect it to our Fox substation, which is a 138 kV operated substation. On the southern end, the plan would be to connect that line into the Madison County switching station that we discussed. And in order to connect to the 69 kV circuit, we would have to install a 138 to 69 kV step-down transformer.
And you all still do not have any kind of a timeline or anything for that project?
For the step-down transformer, no, we do not. It would be based on exceeding that 3 megawatt load level that we talked about.
And then the Fox expansion, which is what you all refer to as the northern end of the project, right?
Correct.
And so you all also don't really have a time frame on when that would be done either?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's the same as the step-down transformer.
Okay. So, does any work have to be done at that Fox substation for just the 69 kV rebuild? Or there will be no work done unless the double circuit is done?
I believe that's correct. Ms. Lemaster may be able to provide more information on that. So as far as the new industrial substation, that is at the southern end of the project, as you all call Correct.
it, right?
Yes.
And so are there any buildings there currently that could be served?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So that substation that you all are proposing to build, is it close to anything that is currently there that would utilize it?
Well, we would not build the substation until a customer has committed to locate at the site. And at that time, we would know locations of buildings that we would be serving.
Okay, and so I guess that kind of leads to the next question. What kind of commitments or anything, any discussions or anything about any potential customers at that area?
I'm sorry, I missed part of the question.
What kind of conversations or discussions, meetings, anything has occurred about any real customers that will be at that will be served by that substation?
So we've received numerous inquiries, requests for information from various projects that have expressed interest in the site. And those come through our economic development group, coming from the Kentucky Economic Development Cabinet. We've been involved in, I believe, 2 meetings with representatives from potential customers to discuss the site in further detail and how we would serve it.
And I understand some of that might be confidential, but is there like a ballpark on when they could be coming, how much load they would need, anything that you can share?
Yeah, so obviously, I don't know the exact number of projects, but I would guess we're talking in the 10 to 20 project range, maybe more. And all those parameters vary. Typically, what we see as far as schedule is they're interested in having service provided to them within a time frame that's generally 18 to 24 months. And load levels, every inquiry that we have seen for the site has been at least 50 megawatts. We've seen as much as 420 megawatts.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that? Do you all have something in writing on that front?
We do, yes.
And as far as that goes, is it any type of commitment that whoever this is, will be building there? Or is it just, we're still thinking about coming here? Or what
Yeah,
kind of is it?
Yeah, to this point, there's no commitment. They're generally inquiries. You know, some of these projects, we see requests for multiple sites in the state of Kentucky. I'm sure others are looking at sites in other states. So I'm not aware of any customer that's made a decision to locate it at this site in Richmond.
Do you know, is the Bluegrass Army Depot served from this same area?
It is. It's served by Kentucky Utilities.
Oh, okay. So then I just want to be clear that the load forecast that you talked about was done about 9 months ago. And it indicated that the 138 kV line would not be needed until 2044.
Yeah, so one correction,
Okay.
the load forecast was done by us about 2 years ago. The power flow studies
Okay.
looking at this area were done about 9 months ago.
Okay.
And yes, those studies indicated that the need for some type of support in this area was 2044.
And that's the 3 megawatts? You don't
Yeah.
need any additional support until you get 3 additional megawatts, and that won't be until 2044?
Right, based on our current load forecast, yes.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
No, I think Heather asked all mine. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Adams.
Good morning.
We'll start off by asking about the question that I saw you volunteer back there, but I don't.
May regret it.
Yeah, that's right. Arm twisting a little bit. It was, we were just gonna, I guess, keep sitting here until you nodded your head yes that you were the person. But all right. So are you aware generally of and I just use it as an example because it's straightforward and it's public and I hope you're familiar with it. The third amendment to the contract with Nucor, interruptible contract with Nucor generally.
No, I'm not.
Are you aware that they've expanded again?
Yes.
At Nucor, that's why I read that. They've increased their load. I think significantly is a fair characterization. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. And usually when especially given Nucor's your, I think largest user on the East Kentucky system, you usually have contracts with your very large industrial customers that maybe spell out a bit more in detail than the tariffs do. Has that been your experience?
Yes.
Okay. And as a general matter, well, you were talking about App Harvest earlier, is in this area. You said they were about 27 megawatts. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. You all have a special contract or a separate agreement other than tariffs with App Harvest?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so App Harvest is only about half the size of what you said, the number of inquiries that you all have gotten on this facility, half the peak demand of about, you said the low end of about 50 megawatts. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So 50 to 400 plus.
Correct.
400 plus would be a Nucor-esque level of demand for the East Kentucky system, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's like a power plant's worth of demand. And so each of those contracts, let me ask this. Have you ever had any interaction with those contracts, at least as it relates to what sort of telemetry, metering, and transmission facilities may be necessary for that particular industrial customer?
I've been involved in those discussions.
Okay. And so I go just, again, as an example. like the Nucor contract, and this is the commission's order in the most recent expansion, from 2021. And it just says, I'm just reading it from here. But it says that East Kentucky states that it will have to install additional metering and telemetry equipment as a result of the Nucor expansion. The total cost of the equipment and labor required for installation is approximately $60,000. Nucor is responsible for these customer-specific fixed costs, and EKPC states that there are no other transmission or distribution equipment modifications needed for the Nucor expansion. Okay, does that all sound at least familiar?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I bring this up, just because it's the most recent case in which y'all had a special contract in front of us that deals with like these types of fixed costs, right, to the public. That's the only reason these questions have nothing to do with Nucor. I just want to sort of level set ahead of it. In the event you all have a 50 or 100 or 150 megawatt facility, single customer or group of customers, show up to this area, do you have an expectation that there will be customer-specific fixed costs required to connect them and meter them and provide them service?
So I can't say with certainty because I'm not directly responsible for negotiating those contracts. I can tell you that, yes, in the past, we have required the customer to make contributions for facilities in certain instances. I think, that's a negotiation with the customer. And I know, part of what goes into that is the financial stability of the customer, the commitment that is made in the contract. So, I can't say what we would require.
Yeah, to be clear, my question wasn't what you all would require them to pay for. I'm just asking, do you think that there would be fixed costs, customer-specific costs incurred by East Kentucky? How the rate recovery goes is a different question. But do you think, in your experience on the transmission side, that there would be customer-specific fixed costs incurred by East Kentucky?
I can't say with certainty.
Well, let me just ask, if there's not a substation there and there's a line there, it brings to me like a chicken and egg situation, right? Do you wait to figure out what the customers, do you build a substation and you have it there and you go, come one, come all, 172 megawatts available, right? And then people show up and they're not incurring any new costs, but customers might pay for the entirety of that substation. Or you could wait until somebody shows up, says, we're coming here, we have 150 megawatts of demand. You build it specifically for them. Those would seem like two different types of situations. At least if I was the customer, I would argue, well, hold on a second. If the substation was already there, I didn't make you incur any costs, right? But if you build it as a result of them coming there to their specs or to meet their demand, then arguably they'd go, okay, well, yeah, that's specific to me. You built it just to serve me. How does...
Yes.
This seems like a little bit of a chicken and egg situation when I'm looking at it. How does that work in your experience when it comes to you all incurring costs and how you recover those specific to those customers that are being served from those expenses?
Yeah, so, I understand what you're asking. And, the intent here is to wait for a customer to commit before we build the substation. Because as you said, we need to make sure that it fits the needs of that customer as far as how much capacity, the voltage level that they want secondary service at, et cetera. What I've seen quite a bit is, when we build a new distribution substation, we have a monthly facilities charge that we pass on to our member that is being served from that substation. One of our 16 owner members, and typically that cost is passed on to the customer as a means to recoup investment that's being made in those substations.
You've been in transmission at East Kentucky for a while, is that right?
Yes, I have.
Are you generally aware that certificates of public convenience and necessity can expire if they're not used within a certain time period?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So here,
at least the proposal is, well, I don't wanna, but it's, the big 138 is what you're proposing the CPCN for. Is that your understanding?
That's right.
And then the other projects, a declaration that it's in the ordinary course or in the alternative of CPCN. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yes.
So let's just talk about the specific one that you are explicitly requesting the CPCN for.
Okay.
The intent is to build the line, to build the poles and conductor the line, but not build the terminating substations at either end. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And you would build the line immediately, so you'd at least invoke the CPCN. They're, you know, within, arguably within the defined, you intend, I assume you intend, if approved, to use the CPCN before it expires. So let's just say you build the line, right, you invoked it, but you're effectively not finishing the project until there's an imminent or an immediate demand for something specific. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And taking your load forecast and your power flow studies under current plus expected conditions, taking that just at face value, assuming no other variables, the substations won't be built, one of the substations won't be built until 2044, or to be in service in 2044. Is that right?
That's right.
Would it be both substations or just one of them?
It would be the expansion of the Fox substation on the northern end
Okay.
and the addition of the step-down transformer at the Madison County substation on the southern end.
Okay. The step down. Okay. To distribution voltage?
No, from 138 kV to 69
To
kV.
69. Okay. All right. How long would it take for you today, if you knew what the specs were and the demand was, to build the line and both substations as proposed?
That's probably a better question for Ms. LeMaster.
Let me ask it this way. In your experience, would it take less than 2 years?
Past experience, yes. With the supply chain issues we're seeing, particularly acquiring a transformer, 2 years might be difficult for the substation.
Well, so that's, I guess that's what's throwing me off, because even under your all's proposal, you wouldn't start trying to acquire the transformer until you knew the demand anyways. So like the lead time on the transformer would be the same whether or not you built it in anticipation of, or in response to a defined load, or if you were granted the CPCN today and you waited to build the substation in response to the defined load. At least as it relates to substation equipment, including the transformers, that would be the same in both scenarios, right?
So, yeah, so there's two different scenarios. And I was referring to if we see the need to put the step-down transformer in at Madison County, connect our 69 kV line. If we have a large load come in, we would be serving that directly from the 138 kV system. So that step-down would not be required.
I see what you're saying. So somebody who demands primary or secondary, or not primary, at transmission voltage, you're saying?
Well, is taking secondary service off of our transmission, but, you know, we would use the 138 kV line to serve them at the new industrial substation, and we would install step-down transformers that might step the voltage down to 34.5 kV. If it's a really large load, that's probably what we would see, or 25 kV, whatever voltage that their transformers would take to step on down to their voltage. We do have slots that we have set aside with manufacturers that are open-ended as far as we haven't specified what those transformer nameplates are at this time, but we could pull one of those slots and use that to more quickly acquire transformers at distribution level voltages.
Would you use different structures if the CPCN was denied, but the commission approved the declaratory request? Would you use different structures for your rebuild of the 69 kV line?
I'm not following you.
So the proposal is to rebuild the 69 and then to also conductor the same
Yeah.
with 138. If you were denied the CPCN for the 138, would you use the same, but you went ahead to rebuild the 69? Would you use the same structures as proposed here to rebuild the 69?
I don't think so, but that's probably a question that Ms. Lemaster or Mr. Spencer can better answer.
Okay. Do you know what the cost difference is between all of the projects going forward now versus waiting to do the 138 when there's an imminent demand? Well, and ask differently, what's the cost savings? You all were talking about using sort of holistic planning and that, great. Like you're never gonna hear me complain about utilities attempting to use holistic planning to take into account reliability, resiliency, economic development, and trying to do planning that brings them together to create efficiencies and savings. Never gonna hear me complain about that. But do you all know what the expected efficiencies are, or have you calculated the expected cost savings of doing it this way versus doing those two, addressing the age deterioration, reliability concerns around the 69 kV, and then waiting to build the 138 kV separately versus what's proposed?
Yes, I think the cost difference is about roughly $8 million.
Do you know if that's in the record?
I believe it is, yes.
Do you think that that's something that I should ask witness Lemaster or Spencer?
Ms. Lemaster.
All right. So talk to me just for a second about if the 138 is built, the load doesn't come, let's just say for like 3 years, which is, really not that long in the utility world, 3 years. The 138 line is just not being used during that. Like you all would actually put conductoring up, right, in the
Correct.
meantime.
Yes.
What is that conductoring doing in that interim time?
So we would basically jumper it with the 69 kV. So connect the conductors between the 138 kV line and the 69 kV line. And we would do that for safety reasons, so that we know if a conductor falls, it's going to trip the circuit, and we know there's an issue, as opposed to just hanging it there and not having any connection. It could fall, we would never know it. By doing that, you get some small benefit in terms of losses, because you basically doubled your conductor size that's carrying
Right.
power. But that would be the extent of it.
Do you have concerns? I mean, so if you're using, effectively putting the conductor to some use, you're putting something across it. Is there a benefit to that versus, I guess, to the like a power plant, right? If you like mothball a power plant, it's not running, and you don't do anything to it, it essentially deteriorates over time. Like if you don't grease things and move things, you have to kind of keep it doing what it needs to do, or it gets to the point where it's inoperable because it's not being used. Is that a concern with the conductoring, or does that, with the fact that you're planning on, you said jumpering it to the 69 kV, negate that concern?
I don't know that jumpering it negates the concern. It's, conductors, insulators and so forth, it's,
Fine not being used is what you're saying.
yeah, they're going, yeah, It doesn't matter whether they're in service or not, they're gonna deteriorate at the same rate. It's basically their exposure to, you know, ambient conditions is what causes deterioration.
Okay. And you, natural ambient conditions or?
Yes.
Okay, all right. The, do you have your data request responses?
I do.
You had a request to 2-14, second response, number 14. I don't even have it in front of me. I don't know why I tried to look. I can't find it that fast. But you mentioned the megawatt demand, or I guess the available
Yes,
amounts. And I'm going from memory here. I think one of the substations was 179. The other one was 55 megawatts. Is that right?
that's correct.
Are those? Is that incremental or is that total?
It's incremental,
Incremental. Okay.
yes.
So, which one of those today only has? Which one of those areas today only has 3 megawatts?
That would be the 69 kV system, so if we build the line and put the step-down transformer in to step down from 138 kV to 69 kV, we could then serve another 55 megawatts on that 69 kV line.
Okay. So the 179 would be at the other end.
The 179 would be, as I discussed earlier, if we had a customer come into the industrial site that wanted service at 138 kV, we could serve up to 179 megawatts from that substation.
Okay. And just to be clear, I think staff asked for this, but there was a lot made about the studies that showed your power flow studies that showed there's only 3 megawatts at. I want to get what the reference was exactly, but I think it's your response. Yeah, your response to 1-6 says EKPC planning studies currently indicate that only 3 megawatts of additional load can be served from the existing 69 kV system without creating unacceptable system voltages. Installation of a 138 69 kV step-down transformer at Madison County Switching Station will eliminate the low voltage issues if more than 3 megawatts of incremental demand is added to the 69 kV in that system in that area, right? So this came from a power flow analysis?
Yes,
Okay. And that was conducted in 2022?
yes.
Okay. So the overload, the violations for your all's planning parameters were voltage issues and not thermal issues for this facility?
Correct, yes.
But they were thermal issues for,
The 69 kV line, then part of the need for that rebuild is a thermal overload of the line.
thank you. All right, what were is this using your ordinary voltage parameters, your planning parameters, or is this, when you say unacceptable, does this use your ordinary planning parameters, or is this some sort of different study?
No, it's our normal parameters.
Okay, and
It's
what
what
are those voltage violations?
Yeah, it's what we file in our FERC Form 715 as our planning criteria. 90% voltage level at least for single contingencies.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm very clear about this. This is in line with your 715 reliability standards.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you have that power flow analysis, or at least the results of it. I mean, you send a cascading trees analysis or something to us, we're not gonna know what we look at. But you can send us the results of the studies that show that the voltage drops below 90%
Certain.
in response to that data request. So can we also ask, just so that's in the record, it's not fair for us to just go look at your 715 on file and use that as part of this case, but we'd ask a data request for a copy of do you file that annually?
Yes,
Yeah, the 2022, or the most recent 715.
yes, it'd be 2022.
715. Now, you all haven't turned those 715 over to PJM, is that right? You all do your own planning under that?
Yes, at 69 kV we did, correct.
And you'll also be able to provide us the power flow study that showed the thermal issues on the 69 kV line as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what were those planning parameters that those thermal violations exceeded?
So for single contingency conditions, exceedance of our emergency rating, and it would be our winter emergence.
Okay, what is that rating?
I don't remember for this line section.
So that's not even an N-1 that's just a single contingents.
Correct.
And then related to this, is this too far, in terms of electrical connection, too far from, the last hearing we had in this case, there was, the IRP hearing, there was discussions about you all doing recent studies and continuing to do studies around the Cooper facility. What is is this too far, in terms of being electrically connected from the Cooper facility for those studies to implicate it, or contingencies at Cooper to implicate this line or these lines?
It is, now, as we indicate in the studies, the Cooper generation has an impact on this area. It's not a huge impact, but we, as part of our planning criteria, we look at worst generator outages on our system or the KU system, in conjunction with the transmission contingency. So all the scenarios we looked at had Cooper 1 and 2 off. That had the worst impact on the voltages and also the flow on the 69 kV line.
And so does the 138 addition, assuming Cooper 1 and 2, I mean, if you haven't done the studies, that's fine. But with the addition of the 138 and assuming some sort of, I don't know what you want to put there, but assuming whether the substations are built at a certain level or not, does the addition of the 138 kV reduce the violations for single contingency, well, for whatever the single contingency is, if Cooper is off? Does it provide any stability or support, assuming changed operations of Cooper?
No, well, it does for this particular area, the Richmond Berea area. It would not provide any real benefits beyond that area.
Okay.
If
But
that's
it
what you're
fixes the
asking.
problems as it relates to that area?
Correct.
Okay, but I guess what I'm trying to understand, is it the rebuild of the 69 that fixes those issues with a better conductoring, or is it the rebuild of the 69 and the building of the 138 that fixes those issues, assuming Cooper 1 and 2 aren't operating?
So the rebuild of the 69 kV line it addresses the thermal loading. We put in a new conductor with a rating that's quite a bit higher, so that issue goes away. It also helps some with the voltage issues in the area, because by putting larger conductor in, we get less of a voltage drop. So it basically takes an immediate voltage problem and pushes it out, where we're to the point where adding 3 megawatts of load brings that problem back, but it helps enough to make it no longer an immediate problem.
Based off of your conversations, and I'm not holding you to this, I just want to get your perspective and how long do you think it would be as a general, just based off what you know, general expectation, that either or both of these substations would be built under expected conditions?
I think we're going to see the need for some type of support in that area probably within the next 5 years when we do our new forecast. We responded to one of the data requests regarding what we saw in the recent winter storm in December of last year, where load was much higher than we anticipated. And looking at this area, the overall load was not higher than we anticipated, but the load on all the residential substations were. And I think it was just a timing issue that all the industrials were shut down or operating at minimal levels. So I think when we take that information and combine our forecast, we're going to increase the forecast in this area and see more immediate needs.
So that was gonna be my final question. I don't know that you all put anybody on that's, you know, in the load forecasting group for you all, but a significant portion of this area is residential development. It's fairly recent residential development, just by definition or likelihood that it has higher penetration of heat pumps for heating than it does any other type of just recent trends, right? More heat pumps, which just by definition means that in 5-degree weather, 0-degree weather, it's more likely that they're going to be on resistance or strip heating, which is a significant increase in demand for residential circuits, right?
Correct.
And is that something that you all have taken a second look at, or a third look maybe, to take into account when you're doing your load forecasting for primarily new build residential neighborhoods, that the demand on those peak winter days is far more than what you all originally anticipated?
So, you know, we will need to talk to our load forecasting group about that, because ultimately the overall forecast for the East Kentucky system comes from them, and then we take that and break it down into individual substation forecasts. So, you know, we can only forecast load at these substations to meet or to match the overall.
Let me ask you this way, Mr. Adams. Are you all seeing on the transmission side demand from residential circuits in excess of what the load forecast anticipated?
So, you know, as I indicated, the only thing I've looked at thus far related to the recent winter storm Elliott was this area, and the residential substation in this area were, I think, about 13% higher than we had forecasted. And I believe it's related to what you mentioned, the strip heating that's associated with heat pumps was not adequately captured in the forecast for those substations.
And that would be, it's not just a 13% demand on a random day, it's probably a 13% increase in demand on your 1 CP peak, right? Or your even NCP, whatever, but we're talking about peak loading on those circuits, is that right? Not just a high that day or an increase in demand on that particular day. That when you say 13% increase, that's probably going to be the peak on that circuit for some time.
Yes.
So cost of alternatives, cost of doing it separately, all those questions are for Witness LeMaster and Spencer, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Honaker, any redirect?
I have a couple. I'll start with where the chairman left off. In the winter storm, you said that you thought it was a 13% increase on the residential substations.
That's right.
Does that equate to that 3 megawatts, or do you get close to that 3 megawatts?
Yeah, I think it was actually 5 megawatts higher than was forecasted for those substations in total.
So if the winter storm, in your opinion, if the winter storm Elliott had occurred on a day other than the Christmas weekend holiday, do you think you would have exceeded that 3 megawatts?
Yes.
And Ms. Temple asked some questions. I just want to follow up to make sure she asked about the routing study. Did you also have alternatives in your planning study that you did?
Yes, we did.
Can you talk about those and how you came about with this alternative? Just, I'm not sure if we were talking about the routing study or the planning study.
Sure, yeah. So, looking at how we would provide support to the area when, we exceeded that 3 megawatts of load growth, we looked at, in addition to this option of bringing a 138 kV line from Fox, we looked at building a 69 kV line from our Union City substation, which is to the northeast of Richmond. We would have to step down Union City's 138 kV only, so we would have to install a step down transformer there to step the voltage down to 69 kV and build to Speedwell Road, and that would be the path to provide an alternate source of power flow into the area. So that was another alternative we looked at. And then the third alternative we looked at was to install a 69 kV capacitor bank at our West Berea substation to basically provide local voltage support for the area.
And why was this alternative that we proposed, why was that chosen? Why do you believe that was the better option?
It provides the most support to the area. Those other options did not provide as much capacity in the system for future load growth. And the capacitor bank is really a Band-Aid. It provides no other benefits to the area. There's no benefits for reliability, having multiple outages in the area. With a new line into the area, you're adding another facility to help manage for unexpected outages or even maintenance outages. So really the capacitor bank wasn't considered to be a good, robust solution at all. As far as the comparison between the alternative we're proposing and the 69 kV line from Union City, the Union City line, like I said, did not provide as much capacity for future load growth. The costs were comparable, so we really didn't see the benefit from an economic standpoint, given that it's not providing as much support to the area.
Can I ask Ms. Honaker? I'm sorry,
Yes.
I need to ask a clarifying question real
Okay.
quick. Just so that you have an opportunity to redirect me, to come back around. There was a data request that was co-sponsored by you and Witness LeMaster, and I don't know which one of you is responsible for a particular portion of it, but in regards to, not duplication of service, but interfering, I think that's how it was intended. But there was a discussion about the interaction with KU and the defined service territories. Was that your part of the response, or was that Witness LeMaster's?
It may be. I'm not sure. I don't remember the exact wording.
Okay. So it's data request response 2-5. It's a 5-page response, and I guess my question starts on page 4. Sorry, Ms. Honaker, I just,
No, you're fine.
I don't want to have to call somebody back.
I'm sorry, you said page 4?
Yep. There's a paragraph at the bottom that starts EKP, well, I don't know, actually, starts in addition. Do you see that?
Yes.
It's not indented, but it starts, in addition, none of the facilities will compete with existing certificates or services of other utilities. And then it goes down and it says, in particular, East Kentucky Power has already reached out to Kentucky Utilities Company with regard to the work that will take place near KU's Falk substation and confirm that no conflict will develop. You see
Yes.
that?
Yes.
And then it goes on, like, it later talks about how this is the service territory of Bluegrass Energy. And the reason I wrote this down, because of your response to Ms. Temple earlier on the Army Depot being served by KU, I don't, as a general matter, I mean, it's within the same county, but I don't know if it's 2 miles or 20 miles, just not, we have too many counties in this. I'm not proposing to get rid of any. We got a lot of counties in the state. So it's some distance, but it's in the same county, the Army Depot. The substation for KU is right there. How much of this surrounding, let's talk about where the north substation would be built, or approximately would be built. How much of the surrounding area is Bluegrass's territory versus KU's?
So on the northern end, if you go south from that Falk substation, you get into the city of Richmond proper, and that's primarily KU.
Okay.
But if you go north, west, and east, it's Bluegrass and then actually gets into Clark Energy as you continue north.
I guess I would ask this question. Of the area in which you all expect the economic development to occur, is that primarily or exclusively bluegrasses?
So the site that is considered the industrial site is roughly 85% Bluegrass Energy,
Okay.
15% KU.
Okay. And then the southern substation, is that wholly within an EKPC member's territory?
Well,
Or
that's the southern.
That's the
piece,
southern one?
yes.
Okay. What about and then the northern?
Yeah, the northern, as I said, that's, if you go any direction other than south, it's going to be Bluegrass Energy.
Okay. Unless you go into the city effectively.
So-
And
yes.
then the city is KU.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Honaker.
And on the alternatives, we talked about that from your planning study. Is there an advantage to double circuiting this 138 kV now, since you're rebuilding the 69 kV line? Will that still be there in 2 years? Will that advantage still be there?
No, it won't. We will begin construction later this year, and that opportunity will evaporate. So, that's why we thought this was, great proactive planning, is because we have this need to address the 69 kV line issues now. And we know that we have a need in the future for support in the area. We know that we've seen tremendous interest in large industrial customers locating at the industrial site south of Richmond. So for those reasons, it seemed to be a no-brainer to take advantage of the construction now and plan for the future by also adding the 138 kV circuit.
And again, we'll go back to this 2044 from your power flow analysis and your load forecasting that you did. Based on your recent experience with the load that was on these residential substations with the winter storm, do you anticipate that that's going to move much closer in time than 2044?
Yes. As I responded to Chairman Chandler earlier, I believe we're probably going to see the need within the next 5 years as we update our forecast information.
Nothing further?
Anything else, Ms. Temple? All right.
No.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. I'll ask Mr. Adams to stick around. I don't think we'll be here until after lunch.
I think he was planning on staying anyways, just in case. So
I thought it was
we
like
had
that.
that conversation when I decided to call him ahead of the other two. So.
All right. So let's take a short recess until, let's take a 15-minute recess till 10:40, and then we'll come back and try to finish. back on the record in case number 2021-00314. Ms. Honaker, would you like to call another witness?
Ms. Laura LeMaster?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
All right, please have a seat. Please state your name and address for the record.
Laura LeMaster, 4775 Winchester Road, or Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky.
Thank you. Ms. Honaker?
Can you state your title, please?
Senior engineer in the project management department.
And did you sponsor testimony and responses to data requests to be filed in the record of this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any additions, corrections, edits to make to those responses?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you those same questions today, would your responses be the same?
Yes, they would.
Is it your desire and intent to incorporate those into the record of this proceeding?
Yes.
And what materials did you bring to the stand with you
To
today?
the stand, I have the application that was filed as well as the data request responses and personal notes.
The witness is available for cross.
Ms. Dimple?
Ms. LeMaster, first I'm gonna ask you that question that was kind of deferred to you from me that I had. There were several alternate routes, and alternate route B was the one that was selected for the project. Could you please explain who made that decision and why that decision was made that alternate route B was preferred?
So just so I'm clear, are you referring to the EPRI routing methodology?
Yeah.
Okay, because Route 1 was, I believe, was the selected.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just wanted to make sure we were
Yes,
talking about
no,
the same
I'm
thing.
sorry. I apologize.
Can you restate the question? I apologize.
Why was that the one that was selected?
That was selected through, going through the EPRI map routing methodology, the EPRI KY methodology. We completed alternative route corridors with the assistance of MV5 Geospatial, who completed that for East Kentucky, and then completed alternative routing, and then finally preferred route selection. All of that work was done with MV5 as well as with an internal East Kentucky routing team.
Okay, and I guess then what made this the preferred route? Like,
So the methodology starts with an area, and I'm sure you've seen the funnel where it funnels down. We got to alternative route selection. Once MV5 scored those routes, we took the three highest scoring routes to expert judgment. From there, the team reviewed the scoring and determined that Route 1 was the preferred route.
okay. And then, I think we touched on this a little bit, but do you have any more information about a timeline for the projects?
So the double circuit rebuild is proposed to be constructed starting later this year and being completed by winter of 2024 to meet that winter peak. The Madison County switching station, the 69 kV portion, is slated to be completed with an in-service date of the end of 2025. The rest of the projects, including the step-down transformer, the 138 to 69 step-down, the Fox expansion, and the new industrial sub would be based on the need. So if there was a load development.
So on the maps that you all provided in the application, specifically Exhibit 3, it appears that there is an EKPC 138 kV line already there.
So there is currently a 138 kV line that runs from Fox to West Berea on the western, a much further western route.
And was there nothing that could be done to use that line for the portions of this project that are needed now?
I think that would probably be a better question for Darren in terms of electrically.
Also, it talks about the new 138 line. It will not be placed on any new parcel of property without any landowner's consent.
Correct.
And so what does that mean for the right-of-way?
So the 138 double circuit would utilize the existing 69 kV right-of-way that East Kentucky already has.
So do you anticipate, so I guess why was that in there then if it needs to be placed on a new parcel of property? If you're using the same exact right-of-way, is there gonna be a need? Do you all anticipate a need?
There should not. There is a small section on the south end. We have a preferred location for the 69 Madison County switching station. But the final location that could minorly impact, we still anticipate that staying within East Kentucky's current right-of-way.
And how does that, also, how does the right-of-way kind of impact the center line and if it would need to be moved during any of the rebuild?
So we do not anticipate, it is our goal to not deviate off the existing center line for the rebuild. However, there may be factors that require that, such as utilities, that we will work through in detailed design.
Okay. And kind of as far as that goes, about any encroachments in that, it was stated that these would have to be removed. So what does that mean?
I don't recall in the application referencing removal of any encroachments. This line would be designed to meet all code requirements, including the existing encroachments.
And then as far as the costs go, so you all discussed the kind of alternate costs and stuff in this last data request. And so I believe it was already stated that it's going to be about an $8 million difference to build just build the 69 kV line and not build the 138. Is that
So if we were to build just the 69 kV now, yes, it would be about $8.5 million.
Okay.
Is our preliminary cost estimate.
And what about if then you only built the 138 kV line when it was needed?
So East Kentucky feels there would be two options in that situation. Had we already rebuilt the 69 kV by fall of next year, then one option would be to remove and replace that 69 and then install the double circuit that we are proposing here today. The second alternative would be to utilize a different route, mainly around the densely populated area of Richmond, and then co-locate and/or double circuit this kind of the southern end of that new line. And yes, that would, I believe, our cost ranges were 27 to 29 million for those options, so it would be an additional $7.5 to $9 million to add that line in at a later date, the 138 circuit.
And then you all listed some costs for the Fox expansion, the switching station, and the step-down transformer. But it was also noted that those were only high-level planning estimates. when do you anticipate that you would know more about the cost of those projects?
So typically in our capital life cycle, what we would do is do budgetary estimates. Once we go into detailed design, that's when we would start to refine. So for, the new industrial sub, that would include, to what Mr. Adams spoke to earlier, knowing the load profile, having the specifics of the power transformers, items of that nature. Also specifically getting locations finalized in accordance with our normal capital construction plan process.
But these are kind of just, I don't want to use the word guess, but kind of just your best estimate as what these would cost when they are eventually built? Or do you expect those to rise significantly due to cost increases, inflation, or how were these general estimates for these other projects kind of obtained?
So I wouldn't say they are guesses. We did do general arrangements for all of the substations. We did, based on the expertise we have at East Kentucky, and similar substation work we've done, we developed a preliminary cost estimate based on those arrangements and costs we've been seeing in the recent, the last little bit. So accounting for some of the recent inflation that we have seen.
And were any alternatives thought about, considered for any of these additional projects? Or is it just these were the kind of the only choices based on building the double circuit line now?
In terms of planning alternatives, I think that's what Mr. Darren Adams spoke to earlier. From a project management standpoint, once I see it, no,
Okay.
it's evaluating the options we've been given.
And so, I guess just kind of going back to the 138 kV line, why would you have to remove the rebuilt 69 kV line to install a double circuit there?
So, Mr. Spencer provides some testimony to that in data request 3 about the reasons that co-location specifically in the more populated areas would not be something that East Kentucky would consider doing.
And then,
Well, sorry,
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. Can I clarify that
Yeah.
when you're discussing this, and I wrote it down as a question, I'll just ask it now, since you got asked about it twice. That scenario one you're discussing assumes that the rebuild is built only, like with facilities that only can take exclusively the 69 kV conductoring, not that it's built with poles that could accommodate later conductoring, right?
Correct.
Okay. Which, even if you all, I took from Mr. Adams' response that wasn't really an option, because the expectation was that maybe, the implication from his response to one of the questions I asked earlier was, I took from the fact that even if you all just rebuilt the 69 kV, you'd probably use structures or towers that would later accommodate expansion. Is it your understanding that the alternative that was actually looked at would not accommodate expansion and would use structures that could only contain the 69 kV rebuild?
So in the option, are you referring to that response in data request 3, where we gave the two different costs?
No, the response to Ms. Temple a
Okay.
second ago, where you said that it would require a rebuild of the line, because that's not an $8 million difference, and I'm not arguing for taking into account sunk costs when doing forward-looking analyses, but if you all expected the 138, the imminent demand to happen within 5 years, kind of be crazy to build it with only 69 kV structures, because if you all had to do a wreck and rebuild in 5 years, where you had to rebuild the 69 and add the 138, you'd either have to, you would be out the undepreciated value of that 69 kV. You'd either go to your bottom line, or you'd have to seek a reg asset, and you'd effectively have the cost of 2 rebuilds there, and only depreciate it for 5 years. I mean, I can't imagine that the cost of a tower for 69 kV is that materially different than one that would accommodate 69 kV and a double circuit 138. Am I wrong?
So, Mr. Spencer can probably speak more to this, but you would not only have to design those structures to be able to handle the 69, but also, so that's a, completely different loading scenario than when you have the 138 and 69. So you could have poles that were substantially different to be able to be designed for both cases.
Let me ask you this way. Do you know what East Kentucky Power would do if the CPCN was denied without prejudice in this case for the 138 kV and it moved forward to the 69? Do you know whether it would build those towers to only accommodate 69, or whether it would build them to accommodate 69 and a future 138 kV?
I believe we would build as a 69. If we were to build to be able to future accommodate a 69 and a 138, we would be effectively spending money for that 138 kV circuit at that time.
Okay.
Right, because there would be an incremental cost for poles
There would be.
to make it, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's 10% more or 100% more, the incremental cost between a pole that can only accommodate the 69 kV or we'll call it a future-proof pole that could also accommodate a double circuit 138.
I'm not exactly sure that percent increase either.
Ms. Temple?
I just have a few more questions about kind of the right of way. So your all's plan is just to stay within the already established 69 kV right of way? No expansion or anything at all?
Correct.
Okay. And so did you only give notice to the people in that line or in the right-of-way corridor, or only people in the center line? How was the notice done?
The notice was sent to those crossed by the right-of-way,
Okay.
I believe, subject to check.
And you all have not selected or purchased or anything, any of the land necessary for that new industrial substation?
No, we have not.
And there's no additional land that would be necessary up at the Fox expansion? All that property is already secured?
There would be an
There's more
additional
there, too?
property purchase required on the north end, yes.
Okay. And what about for that Madison County switching station?
There would be property acquisition required, yes.
And has that process been started, or?
Yes, we have started the process of looking for property on both of those substations.
So that's a little bit different. Are you just looking for property, or have you started actually negotiating with the landowner currently?
We, on the north side, we have been in talks with the property owner for the expansion. On the south side, we have spoken with the property owner of the preferred location, but we're not currently in negotiations on
And what
cost.
about for the Madison County switching station?
Sorry, that's what I was referring to
Okay.
on the south end.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I don't believe I have any other questions.
Nope, you asked mine.
A second ago, I was talking about the retirement of undepreciated assets. Are you generally aware of, and I know it depends on whether it's group accounting or individual assets, but as a general matter, once you retire an asset with significant amount of, well, any amount of undepreciated value that is an expense in that given year, Is that something you're personally familiar with?
No, it is not.
I want to make sure I understand what you were saying earlier. Mr. Adams was talking about an $8 million difference, or as I understood it, $8 million difference between waiting for the 138 and going ahead and doing the 138 now. Do you remember that response that he provided?
I do.
Do you know what he was comparing? If the alternatives would be a rebuild of the 69 with 69 structures?
I believe what he was referencing was what we discussed in data request 3, response 15, which yes, was the two alternatives of either rebuilding that 69 as 69 and 138, or take an alternative route.
315 or 215?
3.
I think the 3 that I have
Sorry.
only goes to number.
You're right. 3-7. Data request
3-7,
3,
okay.
response 7, or data request 2, response 15. I mashed them together.
All right, so the two scenarios would be the retirement and replace, like just sweeping away the 69 kV and the brand new built 69 kV and rebuilding it as proposed here, right?
That was one of the alternatives we gave, yes.
Is that the one that has an $8 million difference?
They are both around the same. That one has a, hold on. 8.5 million more if we were to build the 69 kV now and then replace with a double circuit that we're proposing here in the future. It would be an additional $8.5 million.
Okay. Let me, all right, let's take a step back.
Okay.
So we've got 8.5 million would be the rebuild of the 69 based off FERC Form 715 standards, or because of drivers for reliability issues, right?
Yes,
Okay. So that would cost $8.5 million just to rebuild the 69 kV
correct.
in accordance with your all standards and industry standards for a exclusively 69 kV structure and line.
Correct.
Okay. To build, well, basically what you're proposing, at least for that segment, to rebuild it as a 69 kV to accommodate 69 kV and a double circuit 138 is a $27.5 million cost, right?
No, so what we proposed in response 7, we did not propose the option of building the 69 kV circuit now with the ability to prepare to later install 138. Does that make sense? We're saying that the first cost of 27.5 million was to build the 69, completely remove, demolish, and then rebuild as the double circuit we're proposing today.
Okay, so let me ask it. So to demolish and rebuild would cost $19 million.
Correct.
To just build it the first time costs what?
$8.5 million.
No, not the 69. The 69 and the 138 kV.
$19 million.
So there's no, I guess what I'm confused about is what the incremental cost of replacement, like the cost of decommissioning those facilities, you're saying is already accounted for in the $8.5 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Because either way, we're removing the existing 69 kV line that is there
So it's
today.
not any more expensive to remove it today as opposed to remove it after it already been rebuilt.
There may be minor cost
Okay.
differences, but I think with estimating and contingency, it would all be covered by that.
Okay, so you all are saying the current proposal costs $19 million for
Correct.
that line. Okay. That's helpful. So is that the $7.5 to $9 million amount that you mentioned? Between alternatives, the savings from what you're proposing?
So, no.
Okay. Can you explain what that is a difference between?
Yes, so if we were to rebuild, the first option, alternative one, that we provided was to demolish and rebuild, right? Build the 69 kV now to meet the thermal overload for 8.5 million. Then, when the 138 was needed, to build that at a cost of 19 million, total of 27.5.
Okay. That's the 8.5 we just talked about, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The other alternative would be to utilize an alternative route where around the densely populated area of Richmond where we cannot co-locate. So that was estimated at 26.6 to 28.1 million,
Okay.
including the 8.5 to rebuild the 69 now.
And that's the 7.5 to 9 that you're discussing. But it, so the constant between those is the cost of the proposal for that line, which is $19 million, right?
Yes.
Okay. The alternative, the second alternative is 20. Okay. I see what you're saying here.
Yeah, so the second alternative would be taking a similar route to that we took in the routing study. Routes 3 and 4, we went around the densely populated area. It would basically be constructing a 138, utilizing one of those routes in the future.
And this fixes the issue, the reliability concerns, this 26.6 million to 28.1 million fixes the reliability concerns with the 69 kV?
It would include the rebuild of the 69
At the
on the
same
current
cost that we're
Sentinel.
talking about, the
Yes,
$8
$8.5 million, correct.
Okay. And then the substation is effectively, substation cost is the net of 47 and 19, right?
The substation, yes,
Because
would
like
be
the
the
total
difference
cost of this is
between.
about, the total cost for the CPC, the proposed, I'm trying to not use the wrong terms here, I don't want an objection from Ms. Honaker if we get through the day. It's always my effort, not as the commissioner, not to ask a question that gets objected to. So, the total expected cost of the entirety of these projects, the one that the CPC and is explicitly sought and the projects in which the CPC and is the alternative request, is just under $50 million, right?
Correct.
That's what the 47 million I was talking to Mr. Stacknick about. Okay. So the difference between the 47 and the 19 is exclusively or almost exclusively related to substation equipment and
Correct.
substations.
Correct.
Do you all, are you aware in this docket whether you provide a breakdown of those costs?
Yeah, so in, let me make sure I get this one right. Data request 1, response 4. We provide a breakdown of each of the substation costs.
Oh, it's all confidential.
Oh.
Okay.
Total amount you referred to, I don't think we kept confidential. It was just the breakdowns in that response.
Well,
It's in
I
the
just
to-
noticed, I think you also used the, I think that you also saw it on page 2 of 2 of request 4.
Yes.
Of the high and the low, which the high is
Yes,
the amount that is public, right? It's the difference between 47 and 19?
yes.
Okay.
I think all of that has been made public since then, but or some of that, just not the breakdowns, the incremental parts there.
Okay.
So I don't think you referred to anything confidential, is what I was trying to say.
Well, it's my mistake. I didn't know there was confidential information in the case, so I can guarantee you I haven't seen any of the confidential information yet. So, well, I can look at that for this breakdown. Okay.
Do you need a copy of it?
No,
to look
no,
at
that's
now?
fine.
Okay.
Oh, I know what was my last question. Looking out, how far out do you all do your power flow analyses? Do you all do like a 5-year look?
That would be a question for Mr. Darren Adams.
Okay, so in your position, are you doing most of? So after a need for transmission is found, that's where your role is implicated. Is that right? The planning.
Correct. After a planning need is determined, my job is to execute the design and construction.
Do you have any knowledge of an expected change in transmission topography in this electrical area over the next 5 years that has not been modeled or taken into account in making the determination of these proposals?
Can you say
Yeah,
that
so
one
do
more
you-
time?
Is there a substation that or a transmission line that you all will be working on after this that's up the road that may or may not be taken into account? Is there anything that's electrically connected to this that you know of that you're either currently working on or anticipate starting work on soon that's electrically connected to this that is not taken into account in determining the correct project?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is there anything that is electrically connected that you all are planning on or anticipate doing on the transmission side that was taken into account that hasn't been discussed in the case? A new transmission expansion, a new transmission line, increased demand, a retirement of a line, retirement of generation, that type of stuff that's leading to you guys on the other side are saying, oh, we need to do X, Y, and Z. We'll do that. We're taking into account the studies, but we will do that after we get this line done and dusted.
Not that I'm personally aware of, no.
All right, Ms. Honaker?
I have a few just redirect questions for you. Ms. Temple asked you about the routing study and kind of the process that went into that. What factors were used to determine that preferred route? And was that a Laura LeMaster decision or was that a team decision? How was that brought about?
That was a team decision. We reviewed the scores provided by NV5 Quantum Spatial. We had developed expert judgment criteria that we were going to use to evaluate the scores and these transmission experts' knowledge. So
And what factors went into that when you were looking
what
at them?
factors went into it?
Went into those decisions?
Direct impact, cost, schedule, indirect community impact were the main factors that we were evaluating as part of expert judgment. Once we received the scores from NV5 Quantum Spatial, we noted that Route 1, which was the alternative full rebuild route, scored the best in all of the categories, the natural, the built, and the engineering, as well as the average, which to us showed that by far and beyond had the least impact. And that was how it was selected as the preferred route.
And I believe you said one of your factors was community impact. Why is this the least community impact? Can you speak to that? Why do you believe this is the least?
So it was both indirect and direct community impact that we evaluated. So direct would be those that are immediately crossed by the line, indirect being the general population that that works or travels through this area. It was the least impactful, one of the big reasons, because the 69 kV line was already scheduled to be rebuilt. That impact was going to be seen along that line regardless of the route selected by the 38 kV line, 138 kV line.
And if you double circuit the 138 kV line with the rebuild of the 69 kV line, does that also lessen the impact to the community instead of having to come back later and do a 138 kV line?
Yes, so if we came back later, either doing that with a portion of co-location or an alternative route, there would be additional amounts of poles installed in the area, potentially new right-of-way purchased, depending on the route, additional construction processes that occur and the disruption associated with those. So double circuiting this in a single construction would be the least impact to the community.
That's a clarifying question, Ms. Hunter. Under this proposal, is there any new right-of-way that does not currently exist today?
No,
Okay. So same width of right-of-way, same path of right-of-way, no expansion or change of right-of-way anticipated or proposed?
so we would have to evaluate with our attorneys the exact rights in each of those easements. They are older easements. There may be some additional scope to that, but no, there would be no additional width that needed to be purchased with the 138 and 69 double circuit.
I guess what would are you saying with the easements that some of them may say something like for a 69 kV line? Is
No,
that
some
your-
may say 4 poles and 6 anchors.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So same,
Yeah.
same right of way, but it may be different rights you all are seeking under the easements.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, Ms. Hunter.
And I believe you were asked some questions by Ms. Temple about the costs and how you arrived at these, that these were high-level planning. Does EKPC have experience in building these similar types of substations? And were you basing that on these same types of projects that EKPC has built in the past?
Yes, so East Kentucky has built numerous substations from high voltage circuits for industrial customers. So specifically, I know in data request 3, that was asked about the cost estimate. So we utilized those similar industrial substations arrangements to develop the cost estimate and the arrangement. While Darren Adams spoke to, we might not know the exact load profile, we do know pretty much the layout of that substation, right? We know the arrangement, we know it's gonna take a 138 high side, 138 breakers, metering structures, power transformer, low voltage structures, recloser. So we can develop a large portion of that cost estimate very accurately based on expertise and experience on those similar industrial substations.
Okay, and is that the same thing for the step-down transformer that might be needed, and you've done those similar types of
Yes.
things as well? And in doing these high-level planning estimates, did you also include inflation, contingencies? Were those also included in this so that your estimates would not be way off if it
Correct.
continues to rise?
Yes.
And then you were also asked about notice, and if notice was only given to the property owners. Was notice also provided in the local Richmond Register there before
was.
we filed the application? Was there also notice given for the open house in the paper as well?
There was.
Nothing further?
Any other questions?
I just have one question. So you said that some of the easements might not cover this new project?
No, I don't think they would not cover this project. We would just need to evaluate based on final design, some of the specific language.
So I guess what does that mean to you exactly?
So to me, that means, I think the example I used before is these older easements, some of them may have pole counts included or anchor counts. So with the redesign, a lot of what we'll be doing will be self-supporting structures, so we won't have anchors. It will just be going through and evaluating, each easement from that type of language.
Is there a plan if someone says no?
That would be something we'd work through with the legal team.
Okay, and do you anticipate that if that happened, that you would have to move the center line in any way?
No.
No? Okay. I don't have anything else.
Ms. Honaker?
I have nothing.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Ms. Honaker, you can call your next witness.
Lucas Spencer?
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat. State your name and address for the record.
Lucas Spencer, business address 4775 Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky.
And what is your title?
I'm a senior engineer on the transmission line design team.
And did you cause testimony and responses to data requests to be filed in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
Did you also cause a corrected response to be filed yesterday to correct an ESC code, the numbers were inverted?
Yes, that's correct.
With the exception of that one that was filed yesterday, are there any other corrections, additions, changes that you wish to make to any of your responses?
No, they're not.
If I were to ask you those same questions today, would your responses be the same?
Yes.
Is it your desire and intent to incorporate those into the record of this proceeding?
Yes, it is.
And what materials did you bring to the stand with you today?
I have the application, some data requests, as well as some notes.
Witnesses available?
Ms. Temple?
If you could just give me just 1 second.
Take your time.
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
So I have questions, I just don't think they matter, Ms. Honaker. So, I think that given the chart with the confidential chart we were discussing earlier, I don't think I have anything for Mr. Spencer. So there's nothing to redirect.
Okay. You're fine.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Ms. Honaker, would you like to recall any witness?
Darren Adams, I think some things got punted to him that you all may want to ask, or do you?
It's up to Ms. Temple.
I think, Chairman, if you don't mind, if we could ask about the 138 that runs right on the edge of the right-of-way with Mr. Adams.
If you don't mind. Go take a seat, Mr. Adams. You're still under oath. Counsel, you have questions? Or would you like to ask any direct, Ms. Honaker?
No, not at
Based
this
off
time.
things that got, okay.
No.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Adams, on Exhibit 3, I believe, do you have a copy of that in front of you?
Yes.
Exhibit 3 of the application.
1 second, please. Okay, I have it.
Okay, and I believe it's marked as page 1 of 24 is the page that I would start with.
Right.
There is a existing EKPC line marked with little dashed red lines there. You see it coming in?
Yes.
And then it comes down and about the bottom third of the page starts running along the right-of-way of the proposed rebuild line.
Right.
Is there any particular reason that EKPC chose not to use this line as part of this project?
Okay, so from from an electrical standpoint, we did consider that. The issue is that is our existing Fox to West Berea line. So it terminates at our Fox substation here on the north end and then connects at our West Berea substation. So that is one of the critical contingencies for the area causing the low voltage issues. So connecting to that line would not help us because if that line tripped out of service, we would still see the low voltage issues. So electrically, we could not connect to that line. And from a routing standpoint, I am confident in saying that that was considered to look at possibilities of utilizing that route for the new 138 kV line that we want to add to the area.
Was that route included in any of the power flow studies that you all did like 9 months ago, or?
So, from a power flow study standpoint, the route is not really a significant factor. Basically, we're modeling a line from substation A to substation B, and it doesn't matter to a large extent what the route is. Obviously, the length has some impact, but essentially, route is not, we're agnostic to what the route is when we model this.
I think I asked the question incorrectly, and I'm sorry, that wasn't the answer I was looking for, so I'll try again.
Sorry.
I guess what I was looking for was what's the load capacity on that particular line that it wasn't gonna help you out?
It's not so much a matter of capacity as I said, it is the critical contingency. So when we do the power flow studies, we simulate taking each line and transformer out of service, and then the software provides results that show what the voltages and flows are on all the other facilities in the area. So when we take that line out of service, we see voltages that are below our minimum criteria of 90%. So connecting that line to the Madison County substation and that 69 kV circuit would not help because we would still have that line outage causing the low voltage. That's why we need a new line into the area.
Is that a single circuit or a double circuit 138?
It's a single circuit.
But when you all did the studies, did you study it as a double circuit?
When we did the study, we added a single line, a new line from Fox to the Madison County point. As I said earlier,
Basically, you basically just tapped the 138.
we looked at tapping this existing 138. Yes, that's right.
But you didn't look at making it a double circuit and tapping it.
No, we did not.
Would that have changed the outcome of the study?
Yes, it would. It would be essentially what we're proposing.
And what is that? Did you all studied that?
Well, we studied it from the standpoint of it electrically. It's the same as what we're proposing.
Right. But what about the cost of that alternative versus the one that's proposed?
We didn't look at that. I think it really that scenario was considered in the routing, and it was not considered to be the preferred route.
Well, that's fine, but route's just one thing, right?
Correct.
But cost-wise, do you all have any idea how it compared to the proposal?
I don't, but I suspect it's going to be similar to what Ms. Lemaster talked about, because we still have to rebuild the 69 kV line at $8.5 million. You know, that's essentially a sunk cost no matter what we do. And then, based on the scenarios she talked about where we looked at some type of co-location or an alternate route, those, you know, to build a new 138 kV line or co-locate is probably going to be somewhere in that order, you know, 17.5 to 19 million or so, what the number she talked about. So from a cost standpoint, it's going to be more expensive than utilizing the need to rebuild the 69 kV line.
So, I appreciate, I guess, tapping that, would that be new right of way?
A portion of it would. It's about, I think approximately 3 miles from the general location of where we're looking at the Madison County substation.
So I think we'll ask a post-hearing data request about that scenario, and for, maybe you all can provide a little parameters around your estimate of what the cost would be, given that, maybe a little documentary support for your position that it would be similar to the 20, to the approximately 26.5 to 28.1 of that second option outlined in response 15 to the second DR. So, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I guess in conjunction with that, since the 138 runs parallel for, it looked like approximately 2, but you said it's approximately 3 miles along the route going south. Do you all plan to incorporate the right-of-way that you have with the 138 into this part of the project? Because that would give you an additional amount of right-of-way on the other side. Are you all considering both right-of-ways in your application?
That's probably a question for Mr. Spencer.
Okay. So even the notice part of that, you wouldn't have any idea if it was,
No, I don't.
okay. I believe that's all I had, Chairman. Thank you.
Just one. In the CPCN that you're requesting, does that build redundancy in to your network with the new substation? Does it have a different path of redundancy?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you have two paths of redundancy or just one?
So, so right now we have the 138 kV line that we just talked about that runs from our Fox substation to West Berea. So that supports the area. And then we have the 69 kV line that we've been talking about that is more of a local delivery to customers. So we've got 7 substations off that. So those lines are redundant with each other in that most of the power generally flows on the 138 kV line, and then the 69 kV line is for local delivery. But for that scenario I talked about, if the 138 kV line is out of service, all of the power that serves the area is flowing on that 69 kV line. What we're proposing would add another 138 kV path and a 138 to 69 kV step down into the middle of the load center. So it provides additional redundancy beyond those 2 existing facilities.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions, I think. When we were talking about the West Berea line that's already there, the 138, correct?
Yes.
Whether we double circuit with this 69 kV line like we proposed, or we double circuit with the 138 that's already there, we're still building a new 138 kV, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so that's why you believe the estimates are close in what was provided?
Correct, yes. I think the incremental cost will be similar to what was discussed in our responses to our data requests.
So I guess I'm confused on that, Sonaker. Are you saying that the towers of the current 138 can't take a reconductoring without being rebuilt?
Correct, because it's just a single circuit line.
It was built monopole style or whatever it is. It was not built to accommodate double circuiting.
Correct, yes.
Sorry.
And you talked a little bit about the reliability and stuff in the area, with the 138 having, you know, most of the transmission, the 69 being for the distribution. Can you tell us about the reliability and how that will increase if we add this 138 as a double circuit?
Yeah, so, obviously, what's driving our needs right now are that contingency of that 138 kV line, forcing all the power to flow on the 69 kV line. So we have an immediate need that will be addressed by adding a second 138 kV line. So then, if we have an outage of either line, we still have one line that's in service and relieving the stresses that would be on the 69 kV system otherwise.
Okay, and that's an immediate need that you were talking about there?
Well, I say immediate as in when we see modest load growth.
And again, you saw that modest load growth with the winter storm that we just experienced, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further?
Thank you.
Could I ask one more question? If the storm had not been on those days, which most would have had more people in the industrial park, would that circuit have gone down?
I don't think it would have gone down. We could have potentially seen an overload,
Okay.
and then we would have had to take some type of actions to try to relieve the flow on the line. And, you know, we've looked at what we would need to do in the interim until we get the line rebuilt. We could potentially open circuit breakers to try to reduce flows. Of course, the most drastic thing we would do, but we would do it to preserve the reliability of the system, is to have rolling blackouts to take some load off to relieve the flow on the line.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Can I?
Do you- Yeah, I just want, but you
We've
all,
not been getting ready to ask the same
there's,
question.
well, maybe,
Go ahead.
yeah. But you all can do other things, right? You can do switching.
Yes.
You can
Yeah.
reduce voltage on the distribution system. I mean, there are ways to reduce
Cool.
demand response if some of the industrial load that was on has an interruptible tariff, things like that.
Exactly right.
Have you all looked at any of that, to what that would have been absent the fact that it was no one was working? I say no one, but like, the industrial customers weren't operating?
Yes, yeah, and like I said, the first thing we would have done was open a circuit breaker at our West Berea substation. That would have reduced the flow somewhat, a few megawatts, and then another option would have been to potentially ask interruptible customers to reduce, which we had already taken those actions anyway for the two interruptible customers that are
Because
on this.
PJM called a Max Gen event and.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
And whether or not they reduced, some of them didn't have anything to reduce, they were already
Right,
at zero, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, sorry, Ms. Honaker?
And for the winter storm, you did not do rolling blackouts this time, correct?
correct.
And when you talk about rolling blackouts, if it was just this circuit, this area that was causing the disruption, would those rolling blackouts be system-wide or just local to that area?
It would be local to this area.
Okay, nothing further.
And just to be clear, you have a tariff on file with us about how you take emergency response. That's not a question as much as it is an acknowledgement that certain things are already laid out. So, Ms. Honaker, do you have any other redirect this witness?
No, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Adams?
No.
No, thank you.
Would you like to recall any other witness based on the testimony that's been here today? Anything that, I just want to make sure it's your all's case, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ensure you've got the record you'd like.
I think we're good unless
Okay.
you all have other questions.
Anything else from
I
council?
don't believe so, no.
All right. I have two things for you, Ms. Honaker. We do have a statutory date in this case, I believe, which is why you had such limited time to provide notice of hearing. East Kentucky has offered a brief, well, I don't know, Mr. Adams has offered that you may want to brief the issue of need as it relates to, I think it was Mr. Adams, imminent demand. Specifically, there's a footnote in a data request in the second round of a data request response from Mr. Adams and Ms. LeMaster that specifically says they're not attorneys, but it's their opinion that they've been told X, and if the commission wants, East Kentucky Council can file a brief regarding this. I'm not requesting the brief as much as I am just reminding you that you have an opportunity to file one if you would like, and mentioning that ahead of us sitting here for a second discussing our post-hearing dates. What is the, I know I have it written down here somewhere, the statutory date in this case is February 24th, I think, which is a month from now, is that right? When can we have the data requests?
We had planned Thursday, the 26th.
Ms. Honaker, understanding what the data requests were today, do you all have an amount of time in mind that you would need to respond to those data requests?
We think we can respond to those in a week, Your Honor.
So if we get them out on the 26th, you all believe you can respond by February the 2nd? Okay. Okay. I don't believe, well, so when can you all, let me just ask this, would you like to file a post-hearing legal brief?
Yes.
Okay. When would you be able to have that brief done?
Should be able to have it a couple weeks, maybe, if we do the post-hearing data request on the 2nd. Could we have at least the week after those to get it drafted?
Ms. Temple?
The 10th?
The 10th.
Is that the
Does that
10th?
work for you?
That'll work.
Okay, so the following Friday for the brief. And at that point, on, we'll call it Saturday, it'll be submitted. But you all know what the data requests are. So, Ms. Temple, did you have something you wanted to?
Oh, no.
Okay, all right, sorry. All right, so we will enter a posting a procedural schedule before the end of the week, preferably, well, my anticipation, my hope would be that we can enter it on Thursday and just attach the post-hearing data request to them. So we'll have the data request out and a post-hearing procedural schedule out by this Thursday, with data requests due on the 26th, or data requests to be asked, to be due by the 26th, right? I'm sorry. Out on the 26th, responded to by the 2nd,
Yes.
and then a brief due on the 10th.
Yes.
As always, Ms. Honaker, if you need additional time, I'd ask that East Kentucky file what they have and seek additional time only for the parts that you need additional time for, and that if you expect or anticipate needing additional time, that you'll ask it in advance of. Occasionally at 3 o'clock in the day something's due, we get asked for another 2 weeks, and I like to think, I don't know if you've ever done that, Ms. Honaker, but I'd like to think that folks at the utility knew before 3 o'clock the day they were due that they needed another 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a long time. Another day is not so much, but another 2 weeks is a lot. So, and I don't think there will be an issue with that, just at a high level, just because you're gonna know the responses when you're filing the brief anyways, so, I don't think there's a prejudice there. Okay. All right, so we will we'll also take up your motion, for deviation for the, Courier Journal running late, and then the blurry,
And it was still, we didn't have the tear sheet yet for that when I filed it. That was the one we were waiting on. You can read it, but it is blurry.
The
I mean, but you can
Richmond-
still read it, the
the
Richmond
Richmond one,
Register. We
okay.
included
I
that tear
noticed
sheet
the
in
Richmond Register for the 19th was provided, but I don't think for the 17th.
The 17th was in the proof that we filed yesterday. There should have been 2 of them.
Oh, okay,
And I
okay.
bookmarked them as the 17th and the 19th. to
I
try to
saw the
make it easy,
19th, but I
so,
didn't,
yeah.
okay, all right.
So it should have been in there unless I messed up and put you notes.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to take up today?
No, I don't. I think we're good.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.